Good afternoon, everybody. This is Hunter Mozingo bringing you your daily market insight video here on a Tuesday, January 11th, 15 minutes after market close here in Jacksonville, Florida, 4:15 p.m. Eastern time to be exact. And yes, this is Hunter filling in for Don today as he is not feeling well, but we've got some really good stuff today. We're going to look at leaders, we're going to look at losers, we're going to talk about interest rates in depth a little bit. We're going to really look at the chart of TLT. I know we looked at it on last week's podcast, and ironically, that was pretty much kind of the bottom on TLT right there around 141. So we're going to look at that, how that pertains to rates, and we're going to look at some of the stuff that acted the best, some of the things that are still showing constructive charts or relatively attractive risk reward on their setups, all of that good stuff. So let's get into it, everybody. So what just happened? Strength persists following yesterday's bounce. So we had a nasty gap down yesterday. We talked about this in the video, an intraday recovery, and we saw that momentum continue into today. So the G5 and the Qs, the big outperformers, both up about 1.5%. S&P up a little under 1%. Mid caps and the Russell 2000 both themselves right around 1%, and the Dow, the laggard today, only up about 0.5%, which is to be expected on a day where it was really the growth stocks and the risk on that were showing strength as opposed to the more defensive stuff. I guess some explanation there for why the Dow would be lagging today. Market state, there is no change. It still stays in consolidation. We do see the S&P and the Dow trying to right the ship, get back above the 50 and the 21. All the other major indices still struggling a bit, but market state stays in consolidation. Similarly, there is no changes to the trend gauge at this moment. So like I said, we do see the Dow and the S&P today reclaiming the 50 and the 21. Two consecutive closes above both of those. We'll probably see some changes here to the medium-term trend gauge. Additionally, probably to the short term as well, and market leaders if this type of action continues. So we saw a pretty vicious bounce off the lows, basically from yesterday morning to the close today on a lot of names. And we'll see if leaders can actually get back up through declining moving averages, that type of thing, before we ultimately make changes. So no changes as of this moment, but that could be subject to change pretty quickly. And real quick here before we get into the charts, I know I say it every time, but if you are new, this is me, Hunter, in the middle. You can send me an email if you have any questions about anything I cover in the video, hunter@revereasset.com. If you're interested in what Revere does, what our strategy or approach is, you can email me, Dan, Tim, Merrill, Alex, or Don at revereasset.com as well. So let's get right into it. We're going to start with the indices here. And like I said, the S&P making a valiant effort and actually doing it, closing above the 21 and the 8 there just by a teeny little bit, getting back above the 50. So just to highlight the move we've seen in the S&P from yesterday around 11 o'clock Eastern or so, we were here at 456 up to roughly 470 over the course of that day and a half or so of trading. So a really nice move up for the S&P as well as the other indices, bringing us back above the 21 here on the S&P. Let's move to the Qs here. Not looking quite as good. You can see there was more damage to the Qs, a bigger pullback for the NASDAQ and for tech stocks as opposed to the S&P and the Dow, which explains why we are further below those moving averages. So really the key thing here on the Qs is how do we act when we get up into this 8-day exponential, which we're kind of close to that today. And then beyond that, how do we act at this 388, 390-ish area up into this 21, up into that 50-day? That's going to be the big test for the Qs if it makes a push. Is it able to get through it? Is it rejected harshly? That's what we're on watch for here at Revere. And let's keep rolling through these indices quickly here. DIA getting back above the 21, like I said, staying above the 50, more or less closing right on the 8. 360 level imperative. We've talked about that a number of times on DIA here. You can see the close today getting back above it with some conviction, a little bit more so than yesterday where it was only above by just a smidgen. So DIA trying to right the ship as well, get back above those key levels and the key moving averages. IWM, you've actually got some decent action out of small caps today, trying to make a run just like the Qs back up into a declining 8 and a 21. So just like I'm watching the 390-ish area on QQQ, I'm watching the 220 level on IWM. I think it's important. It has been important for quite some time, and specifically since we broke down here, that 220 to 225 level is significantly of interest. So IWM trying to put in a higher low here, at least for on the positive side of things. We're not taking out this 208.76 low. So trying to put in a higher low. Next step, let's get above 220. Let's get above those moving averages. And last one here, mid caps looks better than small caps, basically right on to slightly under the 21 and the 8, still slightly below the 50. But similarly to small caps, we didn't come back and undercut this previous low here. So making a significantly, excuse me, higher low on mid caps, bouncing off the 200-day. So maybe some signs of life in the market, or in these indices in particular, at least in regards to repairing charts and holding up, because it sure felt like the bottom was about to fall out there. Really yesterday morning, there was some big time selling. So let's go to TLT real quick. And I know we've talked about this on and off throughout the year. We talked about it on the podcast, but I do want to highlight this because I think it's important. So we're seeing a little bit of a break in the downside action here from TLT. And on last week's podcast, Tim brought this up, and we looked at the fact that this 141 level roughly right here is really important. You can see the previous resistance over here and the support here. And so for the time being, it looks like we got some support. And so you can see we actually undercut that previous low, 141.36 right here. 141.45 was the low there. But more or less, we are holding up here, and we've seen rates come back down a little bit as well. So you're getting a little bit of support on TLT. We'll see what happens moving forward. But I want to show you TNX here, which is going to be your 10-year yield. Essentially, you can see this big move over 17 or 17.65 on this chart. What's going to be important is, can the yield stay above this 1.7 or 17 level on this chart? And more particularly, can it get back above or stay above this 17.65? So you see basically the inverse of what TLT is. TLT was falling down. You see rates shooting up. Now this is a very pivotal level to see if it can stay above these areas, or is this a failed breakout and you see rates come back down very quickly? It's something to be open to, something to watch. So let's get into charts. Let's look at some leaders. Let's look at some stuff that's acting well. First off, Ford just continues to act beautiful here. Just a really nice consolidation up here after getting really extended, having big volume on a move to the upside, but digesting that very well. Ford outperforming Tesla today, but Tesla also making an attempt to get back above those moving averages. You see just right there below the 21 and the 50, or slightly above the 21, moderately below the 50, as you can see right here. But same kind of thing as we saw with the IWM and MDY. Although this was a nasty quick sell-off, we didn't come down and undercut some of these previous lows. So it doesn't make it hurt any less when it was happening, but it is a positive in hindsight. We see some higher lows and some charts starting to look a little bit better here. Some others that look like they were beginning to break down, trying to right the ship. Apple getting back above the 21 and the 8. Amazon still doesn't look great at all, but I want to notate the relative strength today, up 2.5% on a day where the S&P is up 1. This is not a good looking chart, I know that, but a very big move back up to the upside, particularly with relative strength, getting back above the 8 days. So Amazon trying not to fall apart here as well. Let's go through some of the hot sectors for the day. XOP, just phenomenal move here from oil and gas. And we know the leaders in the group, particularly this group. DVN, one of the best, if not the best out there in this space. And then FANG, I would say, is the partner in crime that also is right there up with DVN as the top name in their space. OIH, I covered this yesterday, the oil and gas services ETF, continuing their strength, up 4% today. And lastly here, this is not a sector per se, but jets. This is not a good looking chart either, but showing a little bit of relative strength today, staying above these moving averages. This is your airlines and things of that nature, and pretty much maintain that RS all day long. So Jets even showing a little bit of strength today. Some other names that are actually looking pretty good and holding up okay. Some ones that we've talked about on our 21 over 21 in the past and just in our videos. FFIV, this in that network solutions or that network industry group here in Market Smith. This is acting okay. JNPR, Juniper, another networking name, also still acting okay. So we're seeing that area hold up. Another name that's held up pretty well and looked really nice today was FCX. So you can see this move, nasty turn back down, nasty reversal here on the 5th. Shook all the way back to the 21, but held up great and really nice action today. Couple more here on the high beta side of stuff. So this is where a lot of the big moves were today. Now, granted, these are stocks that have been crushed or have had massive pullbacks, whatever you want to call it, but I'm here to bring you the relative strength and the standouts for the day. So Lending Club, really at the top of the list, up 12% on big volume. Upstart, another fintech favorite, up about 6%. Roblox up about 3 or 4% or so. So some of these really beaten up names trying to make a comeback. TTD, another name that had a brutal sell-off, up about 5% today. But there are two names in particular I want to highlight from this beaten up, trying to make a rally type of day. Bros having a big up day, but what's important is the volume here. Really, there's not a ton of these high beta names that have been crushed had big volume today on their moves to the upside, but Bros did. So I really wanted to highlight that and bring that to the listeners here. Additionally, Net, while it didn't have the big volume that Bros did, Net has had some volume the last 3 days after trying to defend this 100 level. So Net and Bros with some big time buying volume near the lows and coming off of some nasty selling. A couple of more on the positive side of things here. ZIM, we've talked about this before, a breakout today, really nice move. This is that transportation shipping company that's putting up gaudy EPS and revenue numbers. And then lastly, on the good side of things, KLA Corp. This is a semi-equipment company and has actually held up really well and is getting back above all the key moving averages here after looking like it might be ready to take them out. So there is the positive. Now let's look at some of the not so positive for the day. So although these finished well, these were not RS leaders by any standpoint or perception of the word today. Steel was big time laggards, even versus FCX, which I showed you that was a leader. NUE down a little over 2%. United States Steel also down today. So steel, for whatever reason, getting no love today. We also saw some of these names struggle early this morning, PanW and FTNT. But as the day wore on, they finished in the upper half of the range, but you can see they're both still lagging the market today for whatever reason. So FTNT and PanW, not the strongest today, not the worst, but we also saw some of these defensive sectors take a little bit of a breather too. XLP, one of the lagging sectors for today, one of the only red ones. XLU, this is your utilities ETF, same boat, one of the only red sector ETFs. And then we also had the transportation ETF be a laggard today, down slightly. Additionally, AMT continues to struggle, down another 1.5% today. We talked about this being a really sharp move for a relatively stable stock. Caterpillar, also a laggard today, down around 1% while the market was green. CIEN, one that was recently on our 21 over 21 and one that I highlighted yesterday, as being one that was actually showing some strength, showing some relative weakness today. And then the last one here in regards to weakness, Snow, trying to find footing here down around this 300 level and at that 200-day moving average, but still a laggard today, down just a little bit while the markets were green. So that is going to wrap up the video. And I will say one last thing, because I meant to mention this while I was touching on the indices. We have removed our hedges in Grotection. We are long basically about 50-51% of the S&P. So no individual stocks at this moment, just S&P exposure until we start to see individual stocks repair their charts and some of these begin to look a little bit better. So That's going to wrap it up for today, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you on Thursday's video and the podcast. Hope you all have a great week.